I was pretending to nap in my study when I heard Sarah and Daniel in the hallway outside. They thought I was asleep. They thought I couldn't hear them. They were wrong on both counts. "The petition is ready to file," Sarah said, her voice low but clear through the partially open door. "My attorney says we have a strong case. Dad's been showing signs of confusion for months, forgetting appointments, repeating stories, classic cognitive decline." "What about resistance?" Daniel asked. "He's stubborn." "What if he fights it?" "He won't be able to fight effectively. Once we file, we'll get temporary guardianship within days. That gives us control of everything. The house, the accounts, all 4.8 million. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." "And the trust? I thought most of his assets were protected." "The trust requires him to be of sound mind to maintain control. If the court declares him incompetent, the trust provisions change. We become co-trustees with full authority. It's all in the documents Dad signed years ago. He probably doesn't even remember what he agreed to." I remained perfectly still in my chair, my breathing slow and even, maintaining the illusion of sleep. But my mind was racing. My daughter and my stepson were planning to have me declared incompetent. They were conspiring to take control of everything I'd spent a lifetime building. And they were doing it with the confidence of people who thought I was too confused to stop them. They had no idea who they were dealing with. My name is Walter Cunningham. I'm 69 years old. I spent 30 years as a district court judge, presiding over thousands of cases, including many guardianship proceedings. I know every legal tactic, every procedural trick, every way these cases can be manipulated. And now, my own children were trying to use those tactics against me. I retired from the bench 3 years ago with a reputation for fairness, intelligence, and an encyclopedic knowledge of the law. I'd always been sharp, analytical, precise. That hadn't changed. My mind was as clear now as it had been at 40. But Sarah and Daniel had been building a narrative, planting seeds, creating a false story of decline that existed only in their telling of it. I waited until I heard their footsteps retreat down the hallway. Then I opened my eyes and sat up. The study around me was familiar, comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with law books, case files, journals from my years on the bench. My desk, where I'd reviewed countless legal documents, this was my sanctuary. And they were planning to take it from me. Sarah was my biological daughter from my first marriage. Her mother, Elizabeth, had died 15 years ago from breast cancer. Sarah was 42 now, a corporate attorney, successful and ambitious. We'd always had a good relationship. Or so I'd thought. Daniel was my stepson. I'd married his mother, Patricia, 25 years ago when Daniel was 20. Patricia and I had a good marriage until she passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack. I'd helped raise Daniel, paid for his graduate education, supported him through career struggles. He was 45 now, working in commercial real estate with moderate success. I'd never formally adopted Daniel, which had been his choice. He'd wanted to keep his late father's name. I'd respected that, but I'd treated him like a son. Apparently, that hadn't been enough. Over the past 6 months, I'd noticed small things. Sarah visiting more frequently, always with her husband Michael, who worked in finance. Daniel dropping by unexpectedly, often with questions about my daily routine. Both of them asking about my memory, my ability to manage my affairs, whether I'd considered getting help with daily tasks. At the time, I'd assumed they were being caring. Now, I understood they were building their case, gathering ammunition for a guardianship petition. I needed to understand the full scope of their plan. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers moved across the keyboard with the precision of someone who'd been typing legal documents for decades. I accessed the county court system's public records database. As a former judge, I still had insight into how to search these records effectively. I found it within minutes. A guardianship petition filed that morning. Sarah Morrison and Daniel Weber, petitioners. Walter Cunningham, alleged incapacitated person. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from today. I read through the petition carefully. It was well constructed, I had to admit. They'd documented supposed incidents of confusion over the past year, claimed I'd forgotten doctor's appointments, though I'd attended every one, said I'd gotten lost driving to familiar locations, which was completely false. alleged I'd made poor financial decisions, which was laughable considering my portfolio had grown steadily under my management. They'd included statements from Michael and from Daniel's wife, Jennifer. Both claimed to have witnessed my alleged decline. Both were lying. The petition requested temporary guardianship be granted immediately pending a full hearing, arguing I was at risk of self-harm or financial exploitation if left without supervision. It was the standard emergency guardianship playbook. Move fast, get temporary control, then consolidate power before the victim can mount an effective defense. But I wasn't a typical victim. I'd seen hundreds of these cases. I'd ruled on them. I knew the system inside and out. I also knew something they apparently didn't. 3 years ago, when I'd retired, I'd updated my estate planning extensively. I'd worked with the best estate attorney in the state, Margaret Chen, a woman I'd known professionally for 20 years. Together, we'd created ironclad protections. My trust was indeed triggered by competency, but not in the way Sarah and Daniel understood. If anyone challenged my competency, the trust automatically shifted to a professional trustee, a law firm Margaret had recommended, with specific instructions that my children would have no access or control unless I was genuinely incapacitated, and a court had appointed an independent guardian after thorough medical evaluation. Sarah and Daniel had read the old trust documents from years ago. They didn't know I'd changed everything, but I couldn't just reveal that yet. I needed to understand their full plan. I needed evidence of their conspiracy, and I needed to let them make mistakes. That evening, I came downstairs for dinner as usual. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing food, playing the devoted daughter. Daniel and his wife Jennifer were setting the table. "Dad," Sarah said warmly when she saw me, "how was your nap? Did you sleep well?" "Very well," I said, keeping my voice slightly vague. "What day is it again?" I saw them exchange glances. Sarah smiled gently. "It's Tuesday, Dad. Remember, we talked about having dinner together tonight." Of course, I said, as if I'd momentarily forgotten but was now remembering. Tuesday, dinner, yes. It was an act, a performance. I wanted them to think their narrative was true. I wanted them confident and careless. Over dinner, they asked me questions designed to showcase confusion, questions about recent events I'd supposedly forgotten, questions about financial matters. Each time I gave slightly vague answers, sometimes asking them to remind me of details. Michael, Sarah's husband, jumped in frequently. "Walter, you mentioned last week you were thinking about selling the house. Do you remember that conversation? I'd never said any such thing," but I nodded slowly. "Did I say that?" "The house is very large for one person." "Exactly," Michael said, glancing at Sarah. "We were thinking maybe it's time to consider something smaller, more manageable. We could help you with that transition." "That's kind of you," I said. Then I changed the subject, asking about their children, letting the conversation drift away from anything important. After dinner, Daniel pulled me aside. "Walter, I wanted to talk to you about your investments. I've been reviewing your portfolio, and I'm concerned about some of the decisions you've been making." "Oh," I said mildly, "you've been taking on more risk than is appropriate for someone your age. I think we should sit down with a financial advisor. Maybe give me power of attorney so I can help manage things, just to make sure everything is protected." "Power of attorney," I repeated, as if considering this for the first time. "That's a big step." "It's just a precaution. You'd still be in control. I'd just be there to help when needed." I knew what he was really asking for: immediate access to my accounts, the ability to make transfers, to sign documents on my behalf. He wanted legal authority before the guardianship petition was even heard. "Let me think about it," I said, patting his shoulder. "It's a lot to consider." After they left, I sat in my study and began planning my defense. Not the defense they'd expect, not the panicked response of a confused elderly man trying to prove his competence. No, I was going to use my decades of judicial experience to completely dismantle their case and ensure they faced consequences for what they'd tried to do. First, I needed medical documentation. I called my physician, Dr. Robert Martinez, whom I'd known for 15 years. "Robert, I need a comprehensive cognitive evaluation, full neuropsychological testing. I want it documented thoroughly by tomorrow if possible." "Walter, is something wrong? Are you having symptoms?" "I'm having a legal problem." My children are filing for guardianship. I need medical evidence of my competency. There was a pause. They're doing what? Walter, you're one of the sharpest people I know. This is ridiculous. Nevertheless, I need documentation. Can you arrange it? I'll call Dr. Eileen Park. She's the best neuropsychologist in the state. I'll explain the urgency. Be at her office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you, Robert. Next, I called Margaret Chen. It was late, but she answered immediately. Walter, what's going on? I saw a guardianship petition was filed this morning. Your children? You saw it already? I monitor filings involving former judges in major estates. This is outrageous. Your daughter knows better. She's an attorney herself. That's what makes it calculated rather than misguided. Margaret, I need you to enter an appearance as my attorney immediately. File an objection to the temporary guardianship request. Demand a full evidentiary hearing. And prepare a counterpetition. A counterpetition for what? I want Sarah removed as a beneficiary of my trust for attempted fraud. I want Daniel removed as well. I want the court to investigate their conspiracy. And Margaret, I want sanctions. I want them referred to the Bar Association. Sarah's an attorney who filed a fraudulent petition. That's grounds for discipline. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Walter, you're not just defending yourself, you're going to war. They declared war when they decided to steal my autonomy and my estate. I'm just responding with superior firepower. I spent 30 years on the bench. I know exactly how to win this fight. All right, I'll file everything tomorrow. But Walter, be prepared. This is going to get ugly. You're about to destroy your relationships with your children. They destroyed those relationships when they chose greed over integrity. I'm simply documenting the consequences. The next morning, I drove myself to Dr. Park's office. My driving was perfect. My directions were precise. I arrived 15 minutes early, just as I always did for appointments. Dr. Park was in her 50s, professional and direct. Judge Cunningham, Dr. Martinez explained the situation. This is highly unusual. You're clearly articulate and oriented, but let's do the full battery of tests so there's no question. For 4 hours, I underwent cognitive testing, memory assessment, problem-solving exercises, abstract reasoning, executive function tests, language ability evaluations, visual spatial tasks, everything designed to measure mental capacity. I performed perfectly, not just adequately, but in the superior range for my age group. Dr. Park reviewed the results with obvious satisfaction. Judge Cunningham, your cognitive function is exceptional. Your memory is sharp. Your reasoning ability is well above average. You show no signs whatsoever of dementia, cognitive impairment, or any condition that would affect your capacity to manage your affairs. I'll have a comprehensive report ready by tomorrow, documenting these findings in detail. Thank you, Dr. Park. Please send copies to my attorney, Margaret Chen, and to my physician, Dr. Martinez. Of course. And Judge Cunningham, for what it's worth, I'm sorry your family's putting you through this. It's unconscionable. They're about to learn that actions have consequences. That afternoon, Margaret filed our response. Objection to temporary guardianship with supporting medical evidence. Request for full evidentiary hearing. Counterpetition to modify the trust removing Sarah and Daniel as beneficiaries. Motion for sanctions against Sarah for filing a frivolous and potentially fraudulent petition. Request for Bar Association investigation. The response was aggressive, comprehensive, and legally devastating. Margaret had structured it perfectly, citing cases I'd presided over where I'd sanctioned attorneys for similar conduct. Sarah called me within hours of being served. Dad, what are you doing? Why did you hire Margaret Chen? Why are you fighting this? We're just trying to help you. Help me? I said, my voice cold and clear. No pretense of confusion now. Sarah, you filed a petition full of lies. You claimed I'm incompetent when you know perfectly well I'm not. You conspired with Daniel to steal my estate. That's not help. That's fraud. Dad, you're confused. You don't understand what's happening. I understand exactly what's happening. I've presided over hundreds of guardianship cases. I know every trick in the book, and you just tried to use them on me. That was a mistake. Dad, please. We can work this out. You don't need to fight us. Yes, I do. Because you declared war on me. And Sarah, I'm a retired judge with 30 years of experience and an intimate knowledge of the law. You're a corporate attorney who just filed a fraudulent petition. How do you think this is going to end?" She hung up without answering. That evening, Daniel showed up at my house. He looked angry rather than concerned, his true colors emerging now that I'd shown resistance. "Walter, you're making a huge mistake. We have witnesses, we have documentation. You can't win this." "Documentation of what, Daniel?" "False incidents you fabricated, witnesses who will commit perjury. Do you really want to go under oath and repeat your lies? Because I assure you, I'll demolish you in cross-examination. I've spent 3 decades questioning witnesses. I know how to expose lies." "You're being paranoid and difficult. This is exactly the behavior that proves you need supervision." "No, Daniel. This is the behavior of someone who knows the law and won't be victimized. You and Sarah made a fundamental error. You assumed because I'm 69, I'm vulnerable. You forgot that I'm 69 with 30 years of judicial experience. I know this system better than any lawyer you could hire. We'll see what the judge thinks." "Yes, we will. And Daniel, when this is over, when I've proven your petition is fraudulent, I'm going to make sure there are consequences. Real consequences." He left angry and unnerved. Good. I wanted him off balance. I wanted them both scared and making mistakes. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 1 week later. In that time, Margaret and I prepared meticulously. We gathered evidence of every false claim in their petition. We documented my perfectly attended doctor appointments, my accurate driving record, my successfully managed investment portfolio. We collected sworn statements from friends and colleagues attesting to my mental acuity. We prepared medical evidence from 2 different physicians and a neuropsychologist. We also deposed Michael and Jennifer, Sarah and Daniel's spouses. Under oath, their stories fell apart. They couldn't provide specific dates or details for the incidents they'd claimed to witness. They contradicted each other on basic facts. Margaret methodically exposed their lies in a way that would be devastating at trial. The night before the hearing, I sat in my study reviewing my notes. I'd been a judge for 30 years. I'd seen families torn apart by greed countless times. I'd never imagined I'd be the victim of such a scheme. But here I was, forced to defend my autonomy and my assets from the children I'd raised and provided for. They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. And my choice was to win completely, to expose their conspiracy fully, and to ensure they never tried this again. I wasn't just defending myself. I was teaching them a lesson about the consequences of betrayal. And I was doing it in the arena I knew best, the courtroom. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin, and they had no idea how thoroughly I was prepared to destroy their case. So far, Walter discovered his daughter Sarah and stepson Daniel filed a fraudulent guardianship petition to control his $4.8 million estate. Using his 30 years of judicial experience, Walter gathered devastating medical evidence proving his competency, hired a lead attorney Margaret Chen, and filed counterpetitions seeking to remove both children from his trust and sanction Sarah for filing a fraudulent petition as an attorney. After depositions exposed their lies, the preliminary hearing is set for today. Now, the courtroom battle begins. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, as I always had during my 30 years on the bench. The building was familiar, almost like coming home. I'd walked these hallways thousands of times. I'd presided in courtrooms on 3 different floors. Every bailiff, every clerk, every court reporter knew me. Margaret Chen met me in the lobby. She wore a sharp charcoal suit and carried 2 briefcases full of evidence. "Walter, are you ready for this? Judge Patricia Wilson is presiding. She's fair, but she'll be watching you closely. Any sign you're actually impaired, and she'll grant temporary guardianship regardless of our evidence." "Patricia Wilson clerked for me 15 years ago," I said calmly. "She knows exactly how sharp I am." "That's going to work in our favor." We entered the courtroom. Sarah and Daniel were already seated at the petitioner's table with their attorney, Robert Hammond. Hammond was a competent guardianship attorney with a good reputation. He looked confident, probably because he'd been told his client's father was declining and wouldn't mount effective resistance. He was about to learn otherwise. Sarah looked nervous when she saw me. Daniel looked angry. Michael and Jennifer sat in the gallery, along with several people I didn't recognize, probably witnesses Hammond had lined up to testify about my supposed incompetence. Judge Wilson took the bench. She was 52, sharp-eyed, with a no-nonsense demeanor I recognized from her time clerking for me. She looked at me directly, and I saw the flicker of recognition and respect. Then she turned to the attorneys. "This is a preliminary hearing on an emergency petition for temporary guardianship of Walter Cunningham. Mr. Hammond, you filed the petition. Present your case." Hammond stood. "Your Honor, we're here because Mr. Cunningham is suffering from cognitive decline that puts him and his assets at risk. Over the past year, his children have observed numerous incidents of confusion, memory loss, and poor judgment. We have multiple witnesses who can testify to these incidents. We're requesting temporary guardianship pending a full competency evaluation." "Ms. Chen, you filed an objection on behalf of Mr. Cunningham." Margaret stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The petition is baseless and potentially fraudulent. Mr. Cunningham underwent comprehensive neuropsychological testing 3 days ago. He scored in the superior range for his age group on every measure. He shows no signs of cognitive impairment whatsoever. The incidents described in the petition are either completely fabricated or gross mischaracterizations of normal behavior. We're prepared to prove that this petition is an attempt by Mr. Cunningham's children to gain control of his substantial estate through false pretenses." Judge Wilson looked at me. "Mr. Cunningham, do you understand these proceedings?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand completely. I spent 30 years presiding over guardianship cases in this courthouse. I know exactly what's happening here. My children have filed a fraudulent petition in an attempt to steal my autonomy and my assets. I'm here to defend myself and to ensure they face consequences for their actions." My voice was clear, firm, completely coherent. Judge Wilson nodded slowly. "Noted. Mr. Hammond, call your first witness. We call Sarah Morrison." Sarah took the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. She avoided looking at me. Hammond led her through the petition's allegations. She testified about incidents where I'd supposedly been confused, forgetful, unable to manage basic tasks. "Can you describe a specific incident where your father exhibited confusion?" Hammond asked. "About 2 months ago, I called to remind him about a doctor's appointment. He seemed surprised, said he didn't remember scheduling it. When I picked him up to drive him there, he couldn't remember the doctor's name. It was a lie. I'd never forgotten any doctor's appointment. But I let her continue. Margaret would handle this on cross-examination." Hammond continued questioning Sarah, building a narrative of decline. She answered carefully, portraying herself as a concerned daughter just trying to help her aging father. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination. This was going to be brutal. "Miss Morrison, you're an attorney, correct?" "Yes." "Specializing in corporate law?" "Yes." "So you understand the legal and ethical obligations that come with filing court documents?" "Of course." "And you understand that filing false statements in a legal document is fraud?" "Objection," Hammond said, argumentative. "Overruled," Judge Wilson said. "Answer the question, Miss Morrison." "Yes, I understand that," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Good. Now, you testified that 2 months ago your father forgot a doctor's appointment. Do you have any documentation of this appointment? A calendar entry? A confirmation email?" "I don't have it with me." "That's because the appointment never existed, isn't it, Miss Morrison? Your father hasn't missed a single doctor's appointment in 3 years. We have documentation from his physician confirming perfect attendance. Would you like to see it?" Sarah's face paled. "I may have been mistaken about the specific date." "Mistaken? Or lying?" Margaret pulled out a document. "This is your father's complete medical record for the past 3 years. Every appointment attended on time. Every prescription filled correctly. Every follow-up completed as scheduled. Your testimony about missed appointments is false, isn't it?" "I remember it differently." "You remember it differently, or you fabricated it to support this petition?" Margaret's voice was sharp. "Ms. Morrison, you filed sworn statements claiming your father is incompetent, but we have evidence showing he manages a $4.8 million investment portfolio that has grown 12% over the past year. That's exceptional performance." Does that sound like someone who's incompetent? Anyone can get lucky with investments. I'll pay. Lucky? Your father spent 30 years as a district court judge. He's highly educated, experienced, and demonstrably competent. Yet you're asking this court to strip him of his rights based on incidents you can't prove and behaviors you've mischaracterized. Why? I'm concerned about my father. Or you're concerned about your inheritance. Margaret pulled out another document. Ms. Morrison, your father's trust was updated 3 years ago. Are you aware of the current provisions? Sarah hesitated. I'm aware of the general structure. Are you aware that if anyone challenges your father's competency, the trust automatically shifts to a professional trustee and you lose all potential access unless your father is genuinely incapacitated? Sarah's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't known this. No, I wasn't aware of that. So your entire strategy to gain control through guardianship was based on outdated information. You didn't even bother to check the current trust documents before filing this petition, did you? I relied on my attorney's advice. Your attorney, who didn't know about the updated trust either because you didn't tell him. Ms. Morrison, one more question. You and your stepbrother Daniel have been coordinating this petition together, correct? We're both concerned about Dad. That's not what I asked. Have you and Daniel been planning this petition together for months? Sarah glanced at Hammond, who looked like he wanted to object but couldn't find grounds. We've discussed our concerns, yes? And these discussions included strategies for gaining control of your father's assets? That's not fair. We're trying to protect him. By fabricating incidents of confusion, by filing a petition full of false statements, by attempting to strip a highly competent man of his legal rights? That's not protection, Ms. Morrison. That's exploitation. Margaret sat down. Sarah looked shaken, her carefully constructed testimony demolished. Judge Wilson was watching with an expression I recognized from my years on the bench. She'd seen through the lies. Hammond called Daniel next. Daniel took the stand with more confidence than Sarah had shown. He was used to sales presentations, to convincing people. But a courtroom wasn't a business meeting. Hammond led Daniel through similar testimony. Incidents of confusion, concerns about financial decisions, worries about safety. Daniel was smoother than Sarah, more practiced in his delivery. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination, and I watched Daniel's confidence begin to crumble. Mr. Weber, you're Mr. Cunningham's stepson, correct? Yes. Walter married my mother 25 years ago. And he never formally adopted you? No, that was my choice. I kept my father's name. But Mr. Cunningham helped raise you, paid for your graduate education, supported you financially multiple times? Yes, he's been generous. And now you're repaying that generosity by trying to have him declared incompetent. I'm trying to help him. By taking control of his assets? Mr. Weber, you work in commercial real estate, correct? Yes. And how's that business going? Profitable? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. It has its ups and downs. According to the financial disclosure you provided in Discovery, you're carrying significant debt, credit cards maxed out, business loans in default. You owe approximately $230,000 across various creditors. Is that accurate? Daniel's jaw tightened. Business has been slow. So slow that you're facing bankruptcy unless you get an infusion of capital. And Mr. Cunningham's estate would provide that capital, wouldn't it? That's not why I'm doing this. No. Let's talk about the incidents you described in your deposition. You claimed Mr. Cunningham got lost driving to your house 3 months ago. But we have GPS data from his car showing he drove directly to your address without any wrong turns. We have traffic camera footage showing his driving was perfect. Your testimony was false, wasn't it? I may have been mistaken about that specific incident. Mistaken or lying? Mr. Weber, you're not even blood related to Mr. Cunningham. You were never adopted. Yet you're trying to gain control of his estate through this guardianship petition. That suggests motive, doesn't it? Financial desperation combined with opportunity? I care about Walter. If you cared about him, you wouldn't be filing false petitions. You wouldn't be conspiring with his daughter to steal his autonomy. You'd respect his clearly demonstrated competence and leave him alone. Margaret introduced the neuropsychological evaluation. Dr. Park had provided a 30-page report documenting my superior cognitive function. Margaret walked through it point by point, highlighting my perfect scores on memory tests, my exceptional problem-solving abilities, my clear reasoning capacity. Then Margaret called me to testify. I took the stand, was sworn in, and looked directly at Judge Wilson. "Mr. Cunningham," Margaret began, "can you tell the court about your professional background?" "I served as a district court judge in this courthouse for 30 years. I presided over approximately 8,000 cases, including hundreds of guardianship proceedings. I have a law degree from Harvard and a master's degree in public administration. I retired 3 years ago in good standing with full mental capacity." "And how would you describe your current cognitive function?" "Excellent. I manage my own finances, my own health care, my own daily life. I read extensively. I consult on legal matters for former colleagues. I'm writing a book on judicial ethics. My mind is as sharp as it was 20 years ago. The petition alleges you've shown confusion and memory problems. Is that accurate?" "It's completely false. Every incident described in the petition is either fabricated or a deliberate mischaracterization. I haven't missed any appointments. I haven't gotten lost. I haven't made poor financial decisions. My children have constructed a narrative of decline that exists only in their telling of it." "Why do you think they've done this?" "For money. My daughter wants early access to her inheritance. My stepson needs money to pay his debts. They thought because I am 69 I'd be an easy target. They thought I wouldn't be able to mount an effective defense. They underestimated me because they forgot who I am and what I spent my career doing." Hammond's cross-examination was brief. He tried to suggest I was being paranoid, that I was misinterpreting my children's concern. But I responded to every question clearly, coherently, demonstrating exactly the competence his petition claimed I lacked. When the testimony concluded, Judge Wilson looked at both attorneys. "Arguments?" Hammond stood. "Your Honor, even if Mr. Cunningham appears competent today, the incidents documented by his children show a pattern of decline. We're requesting temporary guardianship as a precaution, while a more thorough evaluation can be conducted." Margaret stood. "Your Honor, there is no pattern of decline. There's a pattern of lies. Every incident in the petition has been proven false. The medical evidence shows superior cognitive function. The real pattern here is financial desperation on the part of the petitioners combined with greed. This petition should be dismissed with prejudice, and the petitioners should face sanctions for filing false statements." Judge Wilson was quiet for a long moment, reviewing her notes. Then she looked up. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony. Mr. Cunningham, I clerked for you 15 years ago. I learned more about the law and about justice from you than from anyone else in my career. I see no evidence whatsoever that your cognitive function has declined. The petition describes incidents that have been thoroughly disproven. The medical evidence is conclusive. You are clearly competent to manage your own affairs. I saw relief flood through me, though I'd expected this outcome. The petition for temporary guardianship is denied. Furthermore, I'm granting the request for sanctions. Ms. Morrison, you're an attorney. You filed a petition containing false statements. That's a serious ethical violation. I'm referring this matter to the State Bar Association for investigation. Mr. Weber, you provided false testimony under oath. That's perjury. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office." Sarah looked like she might be sick. Daniel was pale, stunned. "Additionally," Judge Wilson continued, "I'm awarding attorney's fees and costs to Mr. Cunningham. The petitioners will jointly pay all reasonable expenses incurred in defending against this frivolous action. We're talking about approximately $75,000 based on the fee statement Ms. Chen submitted." She banged her gavel. "This matter is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Cunningham, I'm sorry you were put through this ordeal. Your children should be ashamed of themselves." As we left the courtroom, Sarah tried to approach me. "Dad, please. We can fix this. We can work this out." I stopped and looked at her. "Sarah, you tried to have me declared incompetent based on lies. You conspired to steal my estate. You betrayed every value I taught you. There's nothing to fix. You made your choice. You're going to cut us out completely? After everything? After everything I did for you, yes. You and Daniel will be removed from my trust. You'll get nothing when I die. You've earned that outcome through your actions. Dad, please don't do this. Think about your grandchildren. I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about what kind of example their parents are setting. I'm thinking about teaching them that actions have consequences, that betrayal isn't acceptable, that greed destroys families. Daniel approached from behind Sarah. This isn't over, Walter. We'll appeal. We'll file again with better evidence. Try it, I said coldly, and I'll destroy you again. But this time I'll push for criminal charges, not just sanctions. You committed perjury today, Daniel. The district attorney will be reviewing your testimony. You might want to consult a criminal defense attorney. Margaret and I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. I felt lighter than I had in months. That was a complete victory, Margaret said. Wilson demolished them. The bar referral alone could end Sarah's career. Good, I said. She deserves it. They both do. What's next? Next, I want you to formally amend my trust, remove Sarah and Daniel completely, redirect their shares to charity. I want it done this week. Done. What about criminal prosecution for Daniel's perjury? Let's see what the DA does. If they don't pursue it, I'll push. Daniel needs to understand that his actions have real consequences. Over the next weeks, the fallout intensified. The Bar Association opened a formal investigation into Sarah's conduct. Her law firm put her on administrative leave pending the outcome. Daniel received a subpoena from the district attorney's office to appear before a grand jury investigating perjury charges. Sarah called me repeatedly, begging for mercy, asking me to intervene with the Bar Association. I didn't answer. Daniel sent angry emails threatening to sue me for defamation, as if truth was defamation. I forwarded them to Margaret, who sent a cease and desist letter. Margaret completed the trust amendments. Sarah and Daniel were completely removed as beneficiaries. Their shares were redirected to legal education charities and organizations supporting elder abuse victims. I signed the documents with satisfaction. But there was one more thing I wanted to do, one more lesson I wanted to teach them. And for that, I needed to set a trap. I called Sarah, and for the first time in weeks, I answered when she called me back. Dad, she said, relief in her voice. Thank you for calling. Can we meet? Can we talk about fixing this? Yes, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Come to the house tomorrow at 2. Bring Daniel. We'll discuss the situation. Really? You mean it? Dad, thank you. We'll be there. We'll make this right. She had no idea what was waiting for them, but she was about to learn that when you declare war on a judge, you'd better be prepared for the verdict. So far, Walter used his 30 years of judicial experience to demolish Sarah and Daniel's fraudulent guardianship petition in court. Judge Wilson ruled completely in Walter's favor, denied their petition, ordered $75,000 in sanctions, referred Sarah to the Bar Association for ethical violations, and referred Daniel to the district attorney for perjury. Walter then amended his trust to remove both children completely, redirecting their shares to charity. Now, he's invited them to his house for a meeting where they think they can reconcile. But Walter has one final trap prepared to ensure they face maximum consequences for their betrayal. The next afternoon, I sat in my study preparing for Sarah and Daniel's arrival. But I wasn't alone. In the room with me was Detective James Morrison from the Financial Crimes Division, someone I'd worked with during my years on the bench. We'd convicted dozens of fraud cases together. Now, he was helping me with one more. Walter, are you sure about this? James asked. These are your children. What you're about to do will destroy them completely. They destroyed themselves when they chose greed over integrity, I said. I'm simply documenting the consequences. And James, they're not just guilty of filing a false guardianship petition. I believe they've committed multiple crimes, wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft. I need you here to witness what they say when they think I'm willing to forgive them. James nodded. I'll be in the closet with recording equipment. If they confess to anything criminal, we'll have it on tape. But Walter, this is going to be hard to watch. They're going to beg. They're going to cry. Are you prepared for that? I presided over 30 years of criminal cases. I've heard thousands of people beg for mercy after committing crimes. The difference is, those were strangers. Sarah and Daniel are family. That makes their betrayal worse, not better. Yes, I'm prepared. James set up the recording equipment in the walk-in closet of my study, leaving the door slightly ajar for audio and video capture. Then, he positioned himself inside. I sat at my desk, arranging papers, looking like a father ready to discuss reconciliation with his children. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah and Daniel standing there, both looking nervous but hopeful. Sarah held a bouquet of flowers. Daniel carried a bottle of expensive scotch. "Dad," Sarah said, stepping forward to hug me. I accepted the embrace stiffly. "Thank you so much for agreeing to see us. We've been so worried. We want to make things right." "Come in," I said, leading them to the study. "We have a lot to discuss." They settled into the chairs across from my desk. Sarah set the flowers on the side table. Daniel placed the scotch on my desk like an offering. "Dad, before you say anything, please let us explain," Sarah began. "We know the guardianship petition was a mistake. We were genuinely worried about you, and we let that worry push us into making bad decisions. But our intentions were good. We love you. We were just trying to protect you." "Protect me," I repeated flatly. "By filing a petition full of lies?" "We weren't lying," Daniel interjected. "We misinterpreted things. We saw behavior that concerned us and we overreacted, but it came from a place of love." I leaned back in my chair, studying them. "Let me understand this correctly. You're saying you genuinely believed I was incompetent?" "Yes," Sarah said eagerly. "We were scared for you. We thought you needed help." "So you weren't trying to gain control of my estate for financial reasons?" "No. God, no. Dad, we would never do that. Then why did you coordinate your petition filing with Michael and Jennifer? Why did Daniel's testimony perfectly align with yours despite the fact that you claim to have observed different incidents?" Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances. I saw the calculation in their eyes. They were trying to figure out how much I knew, what they could still salvage. "We discussed our concerns together," Sarah said carefully. "That's natural. We're family." "Is it also natural to forge medical documents?" I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. "This is interesting. In the discovery materials for your petition, you included what you claimed was a letter from my physician expressing concerns about my cognitive decline. But when I contacted Dr. Martinez, he said he never wrote such a letter. The signature was forged. Who forged it, Sarah? Was it you, or did you hire someone?" Sarah's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not now. We're past that." I opened the folder and showed them the forged letter alongside Dr. Martinez's real signature on other documents. "The signatures don't match." "This is a felony, Sarah. Forgery, fraud, using a forged document in a legal proceeding." "Dad, please," Sarah said, tears starting now. "Don't do this. We made mistakes, but we can fix it. We'll drop everything. We'll apologize publicly. Just please don't destroy us over this." "Why shouldn't I?" "You tried to destroy me." "Because we're your children," Sarah cried. "Doesn't that mean anything to you? Doesn't our whole history together matter?" "It mattered to me," I said quietly. "When I raised you. When I paid for your education. When I helped you through every difficulty in your life. But it clearly didn't matter to you when you decided to steal my autonomy and my estate." Daniel leaned forward, his approach more aggressive than Sarah's pleading. "Walter, be reasonable. You're wealthy. You don't need all that money. We're struggling. Sarah has kids to put through college. I have business debts. We just wanted to secure our futures. Is that really so terrible?" "So you admit this was about money?" Daniel realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. "I'm saying we had financial concerns, yes, but we also care about you. You care about my money. There's a difference." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden. "Let me tell you what's going to happen. The Bar Association is investigating Sarah for filing a fraudulent petition. That investigation will likely result in suspension or disbarment. The district attorney is investigating Daniel for perjury. That investigation will likely result in criminal charges." "Dad, you can stop this," Sarah said desperately. "You have influence. You know these people. You could tell them it was all a misunderstanding." But it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate fraud. and I won't lie to protect you from the consequences of your actions." "So that's it?" Daniel said, anger replacing his earlier nervousness. "You're just going to let us be destroyed? After everything we've done for you? What have you done for me, Daniel? Please, enlighten me. I've been here. I've visited. I've tried to help you. You've been here to monitor me, to gather ammunition for your guardianship petition. You've visited to create a paper trail of involvement. You haven't helped me, Daniel. You've surveilled me." Daniel stood abruptly. "This is bullshit. You're a bitter old man who can't accept that his children have their own lives and their own needs. We tried to help you, and you're punishing us for it." "Sit down, Daniel." My voice had the authority of 3 decades on the bench. Daniel sat. "You tried to steal from me. You conspired together. You forged documents. You committed perjury. You filed false statements with the court. Those aren't mistakes. Those are crimes. And now you're going to face the consequences." Sarah was sobbing now. "Please, Dad, I'll lose my career. Daniel will go to prison. Our families will be destroyed. Is that really what you want?" "What I wanted was children who valued integrity over greed. What I wanted was to be treated with respect in my later years. What I wanted was to trust my family. You took all of that away from me. Now you're experiencing what happens when you attack someone who has the knowledge and resources to fight back. You're doing this for revenge," Daniel spat. "This isn't about justice. This is about hurting us because your pride was wounded." "My pride?" I smiled coldly. "Daniel, I presided over thousands of criminal cases. I sent hundreds of people to prison. This isn't about pride. This is about accountability. You committed crimes. You face punishment. That's how the system works. We're your family. You stopped being my family when you decided to victimize me." I returned to my desk and pulled out another folder. "There's something else you should know. I had a forensic accountant review my financial records for the past 5 years. They found some interesting irregularities. Both Sarah and Daniel went very still. It appears that over the past 4 years, approximately $230,000 has been transferred from various accounts I control into accounts that you, Daniel, have access to. Small transfers, 5 to 10,000 at a time, disguised as gifts or loans or reimbursements. But I never authorized those transfers." Daniel's face flushed red. "Those were legitimate. You gave me that money." "Did I? Show me the documentation. Show me the agreements. They were informal. Family arrangements. They were theft. You had limited access to certain accounts for specific purposes like paying bills while I was traveling. You used that access to steal from me. That's wire fraud, Daniel. Federal crime. 5 to 20 years in prison." "You're insane," Daniel said, standing again. "You can't prove any of this." "I can, and I will. The forensic accountant has documented everything. The transfers, the accounts, the timing, all of it. Detective Morrison?" James Morrison stepped out of the closet, badge visible, recording equipment in hand. Both Sarah and Daniel jumped, looking like they'd been struck. "What the hell?" Daniel said. "Detective Morrison has been recording this entire conversation," I said calmly. "You've just confessed to multiple crimes on tape. Sarah admitted knowledge of the forged medical letter. Daniel admitted to taking money he now can't account for. And both of you admitted your guardianship petition was motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern." Sarah looked at the detective, then back at me, her expression transforming from desperation to hatred. "You set us up. You brought us here to trap us. I brought you here to give you a chance to be honest. You chose to lie, to minimize, to justify. Those choices were yours. You're a monster," Sarah hissed, "our own father, setting a trap, recording us without permission. You're in my home. I have every right to record conversations here. And Sarah, you're an attorney. You know that. You're just angry because you got caught." Detective Morrison stepped forward. "Sarah Morrison, Daniel Weber, I'm placing both of you under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As Morrison read them their rights and cuffed them, Sarah was crying and Daniel was shouting threats. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just a cold sense of completion. After they were taken away, Morrison returned alone. "Walter, that was difficult to watch. Are you okay? I'm fine. Better than fine. They showed their true colors one more time. Now, there's no question about their guilt. The recording is solid. Combined with the forensic evidence, the DA will have no problem getting convictions. You're looking at Sarah facing disbarment and possibly jail time. Daniel's looking at 5 to 7 years for the wire fraud and perjury combined. Good. Walter, I have to ask, do you feel any remorse? Any doubt about what you've done? I thought about it carefully. No, they made their choices. They chose greed over family. They chose crime over integrity. I didn't make those choices for them. I'm simply ensuring they face the consequences. That's not revenge. That's justice. Over the next months, the legal proceedings unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. The Bar Association completed its investigation and suspended Sarah's law license for 3 years, pending final disbarment proceedings. Her law firm terminated her employment. Her reputation in the legal community was destroyed. Daniel's case went to trial. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. The recorded confession was damning. The jury convicted him on all counts: wire fraud, conspiracy, perjury. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison. His wife Jennifer filed for divorce within weeks of the conviction. Sarah's criminal case was slightly more complicated because her direct involvement in the financial theft was harder to prove. But the forged medical letter and her recorded admissions about the guardianship petition's true motivations led to a plea deal. She pled guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges in exchange for a 3-year suspended sentence with 5 years of probation. But the conviction meant she'd never practice law again. Disbarment was final. Their spouses, Michael and Jennifer, who'd been accessories to the conspiracy, faced their own consequences. Both lost their jobs when the scandal became public. Both filed for divorce. Both struggled to rebuild lives shattered by their association with Sarah and Daniel's crimes. I felt no pity. They'd all made choices. They'd all participated in the conspiracy. Now they were all experiencing the results. My estate attorney Margaret and I finalized all the trust amendments. Sarah and Daniel were completely removed. Their children, my grandchildren, were protected through educational trusts I'd established separately, but Sarah and Daniel would never control or access those funds. The bulk of my estate would go to charities focused on elder abuse prevention, legal education, and judicial integrity. I also established a foundation in my late wife Elizabeth's name, dedicated to fighting guardianship fraud and elder financial exploitation. I funded it with $2 million and recruited a board of respected attorneys and advocates. The foundation would provide legal assistance to elderly people facing fraudulent guardianship petitions, conduct educational programs about elder abuse, and lobby for stronger legal protections. Sarah and Daniel's attempt to steal from me became the foundation's founding mission. Their betrayal became the catalyst for helping others avoid similar victimization. 6 months after the arrests, I received a letter from Sarah. It had been forwarded through her attorney since she was prohibited from contacting me directly due to the restraining order I'd obtained. The letter was long, rambling, alternating between apology and blame. She was sorry, she wrote, but also I'd been too harsh. She'd made mistakes, but so had I by not forgiving her. She loved me, but also I'd destroyed her life. She wanted reconciliation, but also I owed her something for raising her. It was manipulative, contradictory, exactly what I'd expected. I read it once, then filed it away. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She'd shown me who she really was. I'd responded appropriately. The relationship was over. Daniel sent no letters, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that he blamed me entirely for his imprisonment. He told people I'd set him up, that I'd always hated him, that the entire situation was my vindictive revenge for some imagined slight. The fact that he'd actually committed the crimes he'd been convicted of didn't seem to factor into his narrative. I didn't care. Let him blame me. Let him spend 8 years in prison thinking about the choices that had brought him there. Maybe he'd learn something. Probably not. But that wasn't my responsibility. My life moved forward. I completed the book on judicial ethics I'd been writing. It was published by a university press and became required reading in several law schools. I gave lectures at legal conferences about guardianship fraud and the need for better protections for vulnerable adults. I testified before state legislative committees about reforming guardianship laws. I became an advocate using my experience as both a judge and a victim to push for systemic changes. Multiple states enacted new laws requiring independent medical evaluations before guardianship petitions could be granted, mandatory appointment of counsel for alleged incapacitated persons, and criminal penalties for filing fraudulent petitions. My case, anonymized but clearly recognizable to anyone in the legal community, became a cautionary tale. Law schools taught it. Bar associations discussed it. Continuing legal education programs featured it. The story of a judge who used his expertise to defeat his children's conspiracy became legendary in guardianship law circles. I reconnected with old friends and colleagues, other retired judges who understood what I'd gone through, attorneys who'd practiced before me and remembered my fairness and competence, people who appreciated that I'd stood up for myself and created something positive from a terrible situation. My grandchildren were the most difficult aspect. Sarah's children were teenagers, old enough to understand some of what had happened. I established the educational trusts for them, ensuring they could attend college regardless of their mother's circumstances. But I also sent them letters explaining my actions. I told them I loved them. I told them their mother had made terrible choices and faced appropriate consequences. I told them that integrity mattered more than comfort, that actions had results, that families could be destroyed by greed. I hoped they'd learn from their mother's mistakes rather than repeat them. Some responded. Some didn't. I accepted that. They needed time to process what their mother had done and what I'd done in response. Maybe when they were older, we'd have relationships. Maybe not. I'd done what I could to protect their futures while holding their mother accountable. 2 years after the courtroom victory, I attended a ceremony where I was honored by the State Bar Association for my contributions to judicial ethics and elder abuse prevention. Former colleagues spoke about my integrity and my courage in facing my own family's conspiracy. The foundation I'd established had helped dozens of elderly people fight fraudulent guardianship petitions successfully. During my acceptance speech, I told my story publicly for the first time. I explained how my own children had tried to have me declared incompetent to steal my estate. I described using my judicial experience to defend myself. I talked about the importance of fighting back against elder abuse, regardless of who the abuser is. Family relationships are important, I said to the assembled attorneys and judges, but integrity is more important. Trust is valuable, but self-protection is essential. When someone betrays you, even someone you love, you have the right and the responsibility to defend yourself. Age doesn't make you helpless. Experience is power. Knowledge is armor, and the law, properly used, is the ultimate weapon against those who would victimize the vulnerable. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached me with their own stories of family betrayal, elder exploitation, guardianship fraud. Many thanked me for speaking out. Several asked for advice on their own situations. A few told me I'd inspired them to fight back instead of accepting victimization. That's when I understood the full value of what I'd done. Not just protecting myself, but showing others that protection was possible. Not just defeating my children's conspiracy, but creating a roadmap others could follow. Not just achieving justice in my own case, but advancing justice systemically. Sarah completed her probation and moved to another state. She works in a non-legal capacity now. Her attorney career permanently ended. We have no contact. I've heard she tells people she was unjustly accused by a vindictive father. That narrative helps her live with herself, I suppose. The truth is documented in court records for anyone who cares to look. Daniel was released from prison after serving 6 years with good behavior. He moved to a different city, works in a warehouse, lives alone. His ex-wife remarried. His children maintain minimal contact with him. He lost everything through his own choices, just as he deserved to. People sometimes ask if I regret being so harsh with them, if I wish I'd been more forgiving. The answer is always no. They didn't make a single mistake. They engaged in a sustained, calculated conspiracy to steal my autonomy and my estate. They lied to courts, they forged documents, they committed crimes. Forgiveness isn't appropriate for unrepentant criminals. Mercy isn't warranted when there's no genuine remorse. What I gave them was justice. Clear, measured, appropriate consequences for their actions. The legal system worked exactly as it should have. I'm 71 now, 2 years older than when this began. I live independently in the house I love. I manage my own affairs with perfect competence. I write, I lecture, I advocate. I serve on several nonprofit boards. My mind is as sharp as ever, perhaps sharper for having been tested by this ordeal. The foundation bearing Elizabeth's name continues to grow. We've helped over 200 elderly people fight fraudulent guardianship petitions. We've trained hundreds of attorneys in elder abuse law. We've pushed through legislative reforms in 7 states. Elizabeth would have been proud of what grew from the ugliness Sarah and Daniel created. Every day, I receive emails from people in situations similar to what I faced. Adult children trying to control elderly parents, caregivers exploiting vulnerable clients, family members filing false guardianship petitions. I respond to all of them with the same message: document everything. Hire the best attorney you can afford. Use the legal system. Fight back. You're not helpless. And I remind them, if you have professional expertise, use it. If you understand the system, leverage that knowledge. If you're a retired doctor, use your medical knowledge. If you're a former accountant, use your financial expertise. If you're a retired judge like me, use your legal mastery. Your age is not your weakness. Your experience is your strength. The skills you developed over a lifetime don't disappear when you retire. They're tools you can use to protect yourself when necessary. Sarah and Daniel made a fatal miscalculation. They saw a 69-year-old man and assumed vulnerability. They forgot they were attacking a retired judge with 30 years of experience, encyclopedic legal knowledge, and an intimate understanding of how the system works. They thought age meant weakness. They learned age meant wisdom. They thought retirement meant powerlessness. They learned expertise never expires. They thought family loyalty meant immunity from consequences. They learned betrayal destroys protection. I'm not a victim. I never was. I was a target who had the knowledge and resources to fight back effectively. And I did fight back, completely, decisively, successfully. My verdict is final. My children chose greed over integrity. They faced justice. The case is closed. And I'm living proof that you're never too old to defend yourself, never too vulnerable to demand justice, and never too retired to use your professional skills to protect what's yours. Did you like this story? Let me know in the comments where you're listening from.